just want to share a little bit about my story. I think we all have one and we all bring it to the table, and it's all so different for everybody. And so it's just really critical for us to kind of hear other person's narratives and not to take somebody else's story about us. So I kind of really just wanted to talk about my journey. I am Appalachian through and through, born in Greenville, Tennessee, went to integrated schools, the whole nine yards. And I wanted to start there with my story being in Greenville. Um, it's kind of a story where when I went to kindergarten with people who look like me, and I was the first experiment in integration in kindergarten for my age group. And so we got there, and we were black, white, and I don't remember if there was anybody else, but I do remember that I think there was an Asian person there. And so we were an experiment, and we had a great time, and life was just seeming like it was wonderful, and it was the way it was supposed to be. And then it came time to go to school, the first grade. And I had to go to school back in the country. And I went back to the rural Greenville, Tennessee, and where I was the only Black person in my class and in the school, because my brother hadn't gotten there yet and my sister had already gone. So I was the only Black person in the school. And it was challenging. And I just want to share just kind of some of the things that happened to me, and see if there's any places or spaces where you could find yourself in my narrative. And you may not be where I was, but you might have been in there. You might have had the same or similar opportunities. And so in the first grade, I remember going there and being the only one, and people looking at me and people saying things to me and about me like that I was dirty, and they would come up and rub my skin and ask me if it would come off, and just saying, a little kid saying all kinds of things. And I remember going home every day telling my mom I hated school, and I had never hated school because she was a teacher, and my all my family came from, they were all teachers, and so we played school all the time. So I was so excited to actually finally get there, but how traumatic it was to kind of hear those kinds of things. And to hear kids would not play with me when I went out on the playground. Sometimes I'd be there and I'd be all by myself because nobody would even bother to play with me. And this is in the 60s. And so, we're really at a really traumatic place for this to be going on. But I can remember, and that's one of the things that I think that we can all be. We can all be influencers. We can all be change agents. We can all be people that make the difference for others. And I had a phenomenal teacher. And so when people ask who was your best teacher, I always think of this person. Her name was Margie Guess. And Margie, I believe in retrospect that Margie was Jewish, but I didn't know that at the time. But Margie realized that what was going on, and so we were in a split grade, first grade and second grade. And what Margie did, I'll never forget. Margie said, "Sharon is the smartest person in our class, and so she's not going to be in the first grade, even though she's supposed to. She's going to be in the second grade. And all you first graders, if you need to ask anybody anything, she's going to be my helper. She's going to help us through this process. She can already read. She could already all those kinds of things." And so I remember how important it is to have a significant person in your life that can make the difference. And so we can be those significant people for other people who need to be the difference. And so I stayed in that grade from first grade to the eighth grade. And then finally, when I got to high school, I thought it was going to be so much better. And there were like maybe four other African Americans that came from all over Greene County. And I was thinking this was going to be great, but it really wasn't great even there. Because there, to do the basic things like to be a cheerleader or any of those things, I was an anomaly, a Black person who wanted to be a cheerleader. And so I tried out and I actually made it. And this was like unheard of because they'd never had a Black person. My brother had gone to that school, but they'd never had a Black person who was a cheerleader. And so simple things. And I'm telling you this story because I just want you to kind of hear me out. Simple things like going to cheer at a football game in Happy Valley, Tennessee, only to be called names, the N word, over and over again. And when you're just a child trying to do the things that children do, and yet and these were not only children that were calling me this; these were also adults that were doing that. And just to show you how things that cannot hurt you that you don't know, guess what our mascot was at South Green? Our mascot was the Rebels. So I have no idea how ingrained something like that can be. But I'm a cheerleader and I'm saying, we're the rebels. Don't take no mess. Get mad in a minute. Jump in your chest. I'm just so excited to be a cheerleader, not understanding what rebel means. And so that's why there are sometimes in our life, there are things that we do and say that don't have the power to hurt us because we don't know that they are supposed to hurt us. So I didn't find out till I was an adult much later that it was a bad thing to be a rebel. So that was kind of how that went. And then I just wanted to kind of add really quickly about my experience in our conference, the Holston Conference. And I want to say this without indicting any one person, but I want to kind of let it be known that one of the hardest things about being an African American in a predominantly white conference. And it's very disconcerting when you are looked at because you dare to be different, or because you don't stay in your place, or because you ask a question. One of the biggest challenges that I've had since I've been in this conference for the past 20, almost 20 years, I've fought for equality. I've fought for anti-racism. I've fought against homophobia. I've fought for all of those things only to be met with that I am aggressive. I am the angry Black woman. You better watch her, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are the challenging kinds of things that Black people experience in predominantly white environments that could cause you pain and could cause you to feel some discontent. And even down to people judging you on whether they believe of your capability, what you can do and what you cannot do. And case in point, one of those has always been my leadership ability, and whether or not Brenda was my district superintendent. And I always used to say to Brenda every year when we would have our consultation, and she would say, "What do you want to do?" And I'd say, "I want to be a DS." And she would always say to me, "Well, that's not really in my control because, you know, that's somebody else makes those kind of decisions." And I say that to say that you can have great gifts, skill, knowledge, and ability. But if there are people who see you to only be relegated to a specific place, then that's where you have to stay. And so I'm telling this story because these are all kinds of things that we've been talking about and we're going to talk about. We're talking about just bigotry. We're talking about hatred. We're talking about racism. We're talking about white fragility. We're talking about white rage. All of those things are the way that we interpret the lived experience of Black people, the lived experience of the other. It may be a brown person. Those are critical. So I just wanted to share with you that when people see you a certain way, it's kind of like they don't know where you've been. And because they don't know where you've been and they don't know how the course your life has been on, often they make judgments regarding you. And so I wanted to just kind of ask a question as I end on my story. Just hearing the part that you heard about my story, has anybody had a similar story? And if you haven't had a similar story, have you been part and parcel to inflicting some of that pain on someone in a season of your life when you really didn't know any better? So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there because those are real life experiences of Black people living in America. And I would gamble to say that for a lot of them, it has been pretty much the same because of the issue of subordination and domination. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it. But through it all, I've learned to love people in spite of and to love people because of. And I've learned that I was born to do the difficult. And because I was born to do the difficult, sometimes it allows me to do the kinds of things that I have to do, even though it's difficult.